When did you first become aware that you suffered with
It was sort of slow dawning on me that I had a problem. I remember as a child not recognising certain people and actually walking across the road because I thought, do I know that person or don't I know that person? I didn't want to embarrass myself by walking past them or saying hello to them if I didn't know them. And the big incident that happened was when I was here about, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, and we had a board meeting, and we met our new auditors, and we spent about 3 or 4 hours with them, and we appointed this company as the auditors. It was the first time I'd met this chap, and I went home, and that night we went to Black Tie Do. So I was with my managing director from here, my wife, and we were standing there in the crowd. There was this little chap come and started talking to us, and I started talking to him politely, thinking, well, he knows me and I don't know him. And he went away, and I said to my managing director, Nigel Armstrong, I said, who was that? He said, so the auditor, we appointed him this morning. And he laughed. And I spent 4 hours in that guy's company, and I cannot remember meeting him before.
That must have been very frightening.
That was, what is the most frightening? It was, I knew there was a sort of issue, because I do remember a couple of times where I have, we live in the cul-de-sac. I remember one time it was a relatively new couple that moved in the cul-de-sac. I was walking down the road to the shop. I was coming back, and I met this lady with a pram. I just said hi to her and walked past. I think she was someone living in the estate, but she was actually one of the women who lived in the cul-de-sac. And she told everyone that I was very rude. That's the problem. If you just walk past somebody and smile and say hi, and you really know that person more than, you should do more than that, then the buzz gets round that you're rude or that you're stuck up. And you don't realise that's happening.
Yeah.
And you might meet that person in a different environment. A few days later, somebody's having a party in the cul-de-sac and you meet until you recognise them when you talk to them. You don't realise that 3 days ago you met them and didn't recognise them. But in the environment you meet them, it's different.
So you're a successful businessman, as we know. Has it affected your career in forming business relationships? Because that's,
I think it's probably affected my career in forming business relationships, because I don't really have any great business relationships. There was also another incident which I thought was quite crazy, where we had a porter cabin when we were building this health club next door, and I was in a porter cabin, and the bloke came in and he was doing some photocopying and things and started talking to me, and after 10 minutes he says to me, you don't know who I am, do you? And I says, no. He says, I'm your manager at your Liverpool club. He said, you appointed me 3 days ago. And he was very, very angry, and he quit. So the manager went back, he quit. I didn't realise he quit until about 3 or 4 days later. And I was told that I'd upset him. But I didn't realise I'd upset him. It's not my fault, I didn't recognise him. It's as simple as that. I tried to bluff it, as I always do, when I didn't recognise you and you recognised me.
So it's the same kind of thing, you thought you were rude and...
Yeah.
That's...
I don't think you're rude.
You say you kind of weren't aware of it until you were an adult, so do you think it had an effect as a child?
It had an effect as a child. Because
socially, did you have trouble making friends or?
Yeah, I never made a lot of friends when I was a child. I do distinctly remember crossing the road and I saw people coming. I wasn't sure if I knew them or not, and that happened. And it's funny because if you go into school and the teacher's there, you recognise the teacher. In new school environment, the teacher's there, you speak to the teacher, and all the pupils in that school you recognise in that class. But on a Saturday, if you're walking down the street and you meet one of these pupils that's in your class, you don't recognise them out of that environment.
Yeah.
And they wonder why you didn't speak to them. And they can't understand it, and no one can understand it. And it's, I'm not sure you can even diagnose it in the early days. Just people.
There's some research that started in 2010 by Prosopagnosia Research, and they're starting a new project which is aiming to do tests for children rather than the ones that are available on the internet at the moment. So that kind of leads to my next question, which is, do you think it should be incorporated in regular testing, with developmental checks with children? Do you think it'd be something that'd be quite good to kind of introduce?
I think what we should do is we should try testing it in some schools and just see what the result is. Children, I don't know, between the ages of say 6 and 12, give them a test, give them a full test and see if they're suffering from it, and if they are, then we can start to decide what we're going to do about it. But I am dyslexic, and I don't know if there's a connection between face blindness and dyslexia, if they're the same thing, if you have to have one to have the other. It would be very interesting to research it and see so many children are suffering from it that don't realise they're suffering.
I'm really, really, really dyslexic. Even tweeting, I have to read it and make sure if I get stuck on a word, I have to go to Google it, make sure that I do it right. A lot of my I's and A's are mixed up. A lot of my TH's, G's and things are mixed up. It is really difficult, and I've always been like this. And it's really frustrating to be dyslexic.
Yes, it is, and it's funny because I go on Twitter and I put my I's and E's in the wrong place, and I get about 50 people coming back and pointing out my spell mistake to me, and I call them education snobs. But there's nothing I can do about it. My little boy, who's 8, he has a dyslexic tutor now. He has once a week he meets a tutor because he's dyslexic, and so there are things you can do about it to help it.
Yeah.
But if a child is suffering from dyslexia and face blindness in a school, and no one knows he's suffering from it,
Yeah.
then that can be really bad.
A few therapies have been successfully developed for affected people. People kind of use feature by feature recognition or use clues to remind themselves of who that person is, like do they wear glasses or they've got blonde hair, or is there anything that you do now that you're aware that you suffer with the condition to help you remember?
No, I
people?
don't think there's any way that I can remember people if I can't remember them. It's as simple as that. If I don't recognise them, I don't recognise them, and that's it. Some people say, when you get older, you start to forget people's names. But I can't even get to remembering the name because I don't recognise the person. The person walks in the room, I have no idea that I met them yesterday, the day before, or 3 days ago. I've got to meet them about 6, 7, 8, 10 times before I can recognise them. And then recognising the environment I'm in is very, very different. You could have staff here, and I could be in a pub and I wouldn't recognise the member of staff. I see the member of staff every day, I wouldn't recognise the pub. Simple as that.
Made people aware of this condition now. Do you think people have treated you a lot differently since they've realised that perhaps that you're not rude, as they were suggesting before? They kind of understand a bit more now.
I don't think anybody who actually thought it was rude has actually even realised that I've made it available. But I'm happy that I can help other people understand that they have this, and especially children. And if they have it, then they can start working on it and can understand why it is that they feel shy. Is a sort of description of it. I was very, very shy as well.
Yeah.
Painfully shy when I was a child, and it's part of this, I'm sure, that caused it.
You think knowing about this condition earlier would have made a difference to your life?
I think knowing the condition earlier probably would have made a difference to my life. I'd probably been more settled. I'd probably have done better at school, and I'd probably got a job as an accountant. I'd be a chartered accountant and earning £100,000 a year. Or if I'd really made it in school, I'd probably be an architect, which is what I preferred. But I was good at numbers, so everybody drove me towards being an accountant. The thing is that my saving grace is I've always had an ability with numbers. You can take some numbers and I can tell you the answer, this plus minus that. And I could do that from a very early age. And that's probably my saving grace and how I managed to get into business and build up a successful business. But imagine someone who's got face blindness, dyslexia, and hasn't got this same ability with numbers. Where do they go?
Can't do maths either. I can't. No, not at all.
I'm useless at maths.
So you can't do maths,
No.
you're dyslexic,
So I
and you
found a
recognise
lot
faces.
out. So I found a lot out. Thanks.
But all those things only stop you if you let them. I think if you can,
Yeah.
if you
Yes.
can kind of build confidence, and I think if we make people more aware of this condition, it's going to give children the confidence, and I
Yep.
think
Yeah, it
then
is.
they can succeed and kind of
Absolutely,
overcome that.
yeah.
That's kind of
And the big thing is well to make teachers aware of this condition,
yes.
so they can try and recognise it in a class where a child is disruptive or shy or won't communicate.